So, in some of the Eastern wisdom traditions, and particularly the one that I relate to, Vedanta, which is the basis of Ayurveda as well, we have a kind of a top-down approach to reality. So there's first consciousness, which is a field of all possibilities, infinite potential. Then from consciousness we have what we refer to as the causal realm, which is basically memory, karma, and impulses of intelligence that would then manifest as what we call the subtle body of mind, intellect, and ego. And then in the human microcosm, but everything else has the same kind of layers: consciousness, memory fields, which would in a way relate to your morphic fields, then the subtle body, mind, intellect, and ego, then the energetic body, which is called prana, and finally the physical body through which we experience the world. It's consciousness, morphic fields, mind, intellect, and ego, which can be literally measured now as, say, electromagnetic activity, at least in the brain, and then energy and matter. Does that make any sense to your model?
Well, yes, it does. I mean, my model doesn't itself predict the higher level of consciousness. I mean, that is a framework within which one could put this model. But the idea of a top-down system of organisation is certainly part of the model. I mean, it's both. It's top-down and bottom-up, because just as in our body, the whole body is affected by the organs within it. They're affected by the cells and the tissues and the genes and the molecules and so on. There's both influence from lower up, bottom up and top down. But if we look at the way the universe is organized, it's in a series of levels, like galaxies containing solar systems, containing planets like Gaia, with a whole top-down system of organization of the atmosphere and so forth. Then ecosystems, and then organisms with organs and tissues and cells and molecules. I mean, there is this top-down level, and there's also the bottom-up level. So I think we need both, and I think it fits quite well with the Indian version, the sort of traditional Hindu idea of karma as a sort of memory in nature. And I found when I was first developing the idea of morphic resonance as memory in nature, when I discussed it with colleagues in Cambridge, most of them were completely baffled, because Western thought doesn't have memory in nature. For Western philosophy from Plato onwards, memory is amnesic. Nature's amnesic. There's no memory in nature. Everything's determined by Platonic forms or mathematical equations outside space and time. Whereas in the traditional Indian worldview, there's a kind of memory within nature which fits much better with what I'm saying.
But the memory in nature exists as possibilities, or probabilities, you might say. It's not. So if I asked you a question like, what did you have for dinner last night? So what did you have for dinner last night?
Fish and vegetables.
Okay. Where was that memory before I asked you the question? I can't go into your brain to look for that. No. Or you have a vocabulary, let's say, of 10,000 words. You're just using a few of them right now.
Yes.
Where is the rest of it? And what the Vedantic view would say, it exists in that field till you retrieve it. It's almost like the collapse of a wave function. And then there's, of course, activity in the brain.
Yes.
But before that, it's part of the field.
Well, I would say very much the same. The thing is, you see that, well, first of all, there's two kinds of memories. Most memories in nature, in species, like instincts in animals, are habit memories. And I would say that the bulk of nature is habitual, works on habits. The so-called laws of nature are actually more like habits. These are the regularities of nature based on memory, which becomes habitual and largely unconscious, because habits, even in us, are unconscious. When you come to episodic memory, the memory of specific things, like dinner last night, then it's of a particular event. If you ask me to remember dinners in general, then there'd be a kind of blur of memories,
sure,
thousands of dinners. But a particular one, then there's a specific memory about a specific event. But like the habit, memory. This isn't stored in the brain, on my view. The brain's more like a receiving apparatus, more like a TV receiver than a video recorder. So you're tuning it in, you're tuning into it. Now, the reason I prefer the resonance metaphor to a version of the field metaphor for memory storage is the field implies there's some kind of something out there in space. And some people talk of the Akashic record, imagining some kind of celestial filing cabinet system or hard drive or something. I don't think we need a spatial metaphor for memory. Memory is a relationship in time. When I meet someone I haven't seen for ages and I recognize them, what I think is happening is I'm resonating with the previous time I saw them. And there's a resonance across time. It's just leaping across time. I don't think in the meantime it has to be stored somewhere in space. You see, if it's possible for there to be connections directly across time, then we don't need to use these spatial metaphors. If we have spatial metaphors, then people say, well, where is it? You know, the Akashic record in the ether, or is it in some kind of cloud computing storage system, or a kind of celestial hard drive?
Could it not just be possibility waves in
well, I think they are possibility waves.
So
I mean, I discussed morphic resonance and morphic fields with the late great philosopher of science, Sir Karl Popper, and he thought that the best way of thinking of them was propensity fields. So they're fields of possibility, but they're not just fields of any old possibility, they're fields which make some possibilities much more likely than others. They're fields of habit or fields of propensity. Yes, they are. They're fields and they work by resonance. So there's a particular pattern of activity in my brain when I see someone I've seen before. It sets up a characteristic electromagnetic pattern. This pattern interfaces with the experience, the morphic fields of that experience last time I saw them. And there's a resonance across time. We don't, if it's a resonance across time, like a kind of spark passing across time, it doesn't happen until I see that person. When it happens, then I enter this resonance. But it's not necessary to suppose that in the meantime it's been stored in some spatial storage system. Maybe it has.
I was watching recently a video on one of these YouTube channels or something else, from Frank Wilczek, who won the Nobel Prize in 2011 for discovering yet another particle. He's at MIT. But he was saying that there's a resurgence now of the idea of the so-called ether. And he wouldn't call it the ether, he would call it the grid or the matrix, which is a popular word. And he showed a video. He said if you had an instrument which was very refined, kind of, he called it an ultra-stroboscopic nanoscope, which you could look deep into the nature of inner space. And he actually showed it visually. It was very beautiful. If you could look into the structure of deep space where we are right now, which exists in our body and outside of our body, and this is 10 to the power of minus so many seconds and so many centimeters. And then he showed these gluons and these subatomic particles coming out of empty space, colliding, and then going back, except a few that seem to be gushing out as the universe. And you know, other physicists have commented that every cubic centimeter of space has enough energy to make the universe over many times. So I wrote to him, I said, is the universe coming out of this so-called grid, invisible, right this moment, you know? And I asked other physicists that, and they said yes. But then I said, it seems to come out the same way. I mean, you know, we still have the Milky Way galaxy and stars and you and me and insects. So does this have some kind of organizing principle there, or a memory of sorts? I never heard back from him, but I did hear back from other physicists who did say that, you know, they resonated with your idea of morphic resonance and memory as part of this matrix or womb of the entire universe, from microcosm all the way up to stars and galaxies.
Well, the quantum physicist David Bohm took that view. He
Yes.
thought that it comes out of what he called the implicate order.
Correct.
And the implicate order has a kind of memory. Something that's happened gets folded back into the implicate order from the explicate order, which is the world we know. And then it's in the implicate order, so next time it happens it will be influenced by what's happened before. So the implicate order, a quantum concept of his, contains a memory. And the quantum physicist Lee Smolin wrote a book recently called Time Reborn,
Yes.
in which he puts forward what he calls the principle of precedence, things that have happened once are more likely to happen again.
But once in a while there's a break in that, right? Would you call that a creative leap in evolution?
Yes, well, the point is that both Smolin's idea and Bohm's and morphic resonance, my own idea, give the idea of habits. And they explain